Is going to college actually worth it? Choosing whether or not to go to college is one of the most impactful decisions that everybody has to make. For some people, the decision can set them ahead years closer to their goals. For others, it can set them back irreversibly. The decision of how to spend your first few years after high school can completely change the trajectory of your life. But making this decision has never been more difficult. People have become extremely polarized around the topic of university. Most of society still sees getting a degree as a complete necessity. But in the tech and startup world, there's a growing group that's completely opposed to university. They believe that it's a complete waste of time for young, ambitious people who should be spending their time developing hard skills or building companies. And this perspective actually has a lot of merits to it. In fact, many smart people like Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel advocate against going to college. But in the face of these strong perspectives, many people get too caught up in one side of the argument. Coming out of high school, many people see college as the only option because that's just what everyone around them is doing. Now, something I've seen a lot recently is that ambitious, hungry young people often are extremely exposed to the tech and startup scenes, and so they'll oversubscribe to the perspective that college is not worth going to, and they'll do that regardless of the evaluation of their own scenario. This is why I wanted to make a video on the topic. Now, I'm currently a student at the University of Pennsylvania, and I've completed my first 2 years there. So I got to experience what it's actually like attending college and what the pros and cons are, what are the different resources available, and is it actually worth it for your own progress. I'm also currently on gap year, and I'm working on a startup in SF. So I've gotten to see the dropout culture, and a lot of my friends are either dropouts, they're also on gap year like me, or they never went to college in the first place, they opted not to. So I've gotten to see the other side of things as well. So I wanted to offer my perspective, having seen both sides of the spectrum here, so that people can make fully informed decisions about whether they want to go to college or not. So let's cover the important nuances on each side of the argument, and then at the end of the video, I'll tell you whether I personally think college is worth it or not. Let's start off by talking about why college can be a very dangerous or undesirable option for some people. First, college can be a black hole for explorers. Now, what I mean by this is that college is very good for conventional paths and also for people who know what they want to do. The issue is that because college environment is so geared around career development and people are so laser focused on that, especially on specific institutions like Ivy Leagues, the people who go into the university not knowing what they want to do see all the people who do know what they want to do, and in their point of uncertainty, which is that they don't have a clear plan for what they want to do in their future, they just defer to the default paths of certainty that sort of pull in everyone. The reason for this is that in your time of uncertainty where you don't know exactly what you want to do in the future and you're kind of trying to explore that, you are surrounded by all these people who have a lot of certainty, whether it be misguided or not, of exactly what they want to do. And often those people all converge to these common paths that are optimized for money and safety. And so those would be things like finance, consulting, management, paths like that, which some people are genuinely interested in, and for them it's great. But for the others, they sort of get sucked into this path thinking that if I don't know what I want to do, I should probably just pursue the path of certainty that I know I'm going to make money from. And then they end up discontent that way. And so it's very disadvantageous for people who are trying to find what they're genuinely interested in. Second, college is a huge spend on time and resources. Depending on whether you do post-secondary education or not, college plus graduate school can take anywhere from 4 to 6 and even 8 years. This is obviously a huge investment of your time, not to mention the massive costs and potential debt that comes with it. So given this time spend, if you aren't absolutely sure that you're working on something that's contributing towards your long-term goals, it may not be worth going to college. Third, college is not great for learning soft skills. If you're looking to develop non-technical skills, especially those like business and entrepreneurship, then I don't think college is the best place for that. The reason is that the best way to learn these skills is by actually doing. And so if you're trying to learn business or entrepreneurship, the best way to do that would actually be to start a business or to start your own startup or company. And you'll learn far more from that than you would from a typical college course. So I would say that for these non-technical majors, it's often better to just replicate the experience yourself in the real world rather than try to learn the experience in college. Fourth, college is not necessary to be generally successful. Often the default goals that people have when they're thinking of going to college and why they're going to college are misguided. Is your goal just to make money or to support yourself or to have location, money, and time freedom? In that case, college may not be necessary for you. In fact, there's a whole new wave of people doing social media agency marketing and starting their own businesses like dropshipping. There will always be new ones coming up where people are becoming millionaires and making their own businesses completely without a college degree. And it's true that it's completely not necessary to have a degree in order to do these types of things. But there's actually a lot of nuances and pitfalls that I see people often ignore with the anti-college argument, and there's a lot of reasons why college actually may be the right decision for you. First, learning technical subjects takes structure. Many people nowadays think that you can learn anything online. And while that concept may be technically true because there's so many resources online for you to learn and look stuff up and do your own research, it's really difficult to match the rigor and, selection of resources and peers and professors and guidance that you get from a college environment. When you're trying to learn something yourself, you have to think to yourself, do you really have the foresight and the ability and the discipline to learn an entire 4 years worth of content and get the same breadth that a college education would give you? Some people feel like when they learn subjects in college, they're learning a lot of things that are impractical or that they don't actually care about in the real world. But I would say that while that may be true in many cases, it's also worth considering the value of having broad strokes and having a breadth of knowledge to kind of support your understanding of a topic, regardless of if it's directly applicable to the specific thing that you're planning to do. Now, following from that point, some subjects, especially technical subjects, require resources to learn. The counterexample to this that people often like to bring up is computer science, and it's true that for computer science, you don't really need that many resources to learn it yourself. In fact, all you really need is a computer, and there's plenty of resources on the internet to teach you how to do things. But this often causes people to overlook other subjects like neuroscience or biology or quantum computing, where you actually need a lot of resources to learn these subjects if you want to get the full experience. For example, you might need lab equipment or facilities to do research or, physical equipment to build things like in robotics. And so it's often the case that it's difficult to get these resources if you're not in a college environment. Some people will say that, I can hustle and get these opportunities without going to college. And that's absolutely true. Like if you really want to, you can reach out to people and get to work in a college environment or environments with resources without attending the university. But in that case, I would say if you're the type of person that can hustle like that, then college is the perfect environment for you. The reason is that you can think of college like an environment that provides you with a massive amount of resources, but it doesn't force you to take advantage of them. So the baseline of that experience may be that most people don't take advantage of these resources, and as a result, they feel like the experience is kind of subpar. But if you're the type to hustle and take advantage of the resources available to you, there's so many opportunities that can be, extremely beneficial. Third, university networks can be extremely valuable. Some people may doubt this because it's always difficult to quantify the value of networks. And it's also important to note that this is mostly true of very good schools because they attract a lot of talented, smart people, where the value of those relationships building over time can compound very fast. There's also definite value to being exposed to a huge variety of people with different interests and ambitions, and it's hard to replicate that sort of environment without a college atmosphere, especially when you're young. Another thing to be aware of is that some subjects and jobs and fields unfortunately still basically require a college degree. This is especially true in academia, where the entire pipeline is built around going to college and then getting a PhD and then doing research. And it's, although possible, very difficult to actually break into those circles without a degree. Also, if you plan on entering a specific job market, it's important to be aware that different markets have different expectations as far as college. It's nice to think that ideally people would only really care about your aptitude and actual competence, and that whether or not you have a degree is just a stupid credential that shouldn't matter. And I agree with that in an ideal world. But unfortunately, because of the way that big organizations work, they have to fall back on credentials. And so they still care whether you have a degree or not, or they'll often just look to see if you have a degree just as a basic verification of your qualification. Now, finally, I want to touch on a very important and often overlooked point, which is that if you don't go to college, you need to make sure that you're extremely self-disciplined and motivated, because you are going to be the person that's driving forward your career and prospect for the future. If you have a plan for something else that you want to do in the time that you would have been in college, that's great if you actually execute on it. And you'll see that almost everyone who succeeded from not going to college, which is definitely a lot of people, have always had this kind of drive and self-motivation to execute on something and do it in the replacement of going to college. And so that's why they ended up being very successful. The reality is that many people don't have the self-discipline to do this, and this is just something you have to know about yourself, whether you can trust yourself to kind of execute on your plans. Because if you don't have the fallback of being in college to catch you. Instead, you have no credential, and so if you fall back onto not executing on your goals, you basically have no backup option. That's one sort of nice thing that college can do for some people, is it creates a default structure which pushes you up to a sort of minimum bar of what you have to do. And so for the people who operate way above that bar and really want to push themselves, then they may feel that college can be limiting towards their growth. So if you're one of the people that college is pushing the bar up for, and you feel like without the structure in place to help you execute towards your goals, that you wouldn't do that on your own, then it may be dangerous to leave college. So with all these points on the table, we can evaluate whether college is actually worth it. Some important points that we talked about are that if you want to learn a technical subject, college is probably a very good option for you. Whereas if you want to learn something non-technical or start a startup or business immediately, then you might not need to go to college, and doing that instead might be the best option. In general, I think everyone's default or starting option should be to go to college, and that's because it's kind of a nice backup that allows you to explore if you're aware of the exploration trap, and kind of have the safety of not having to go into the career world where you're forced to conform to specific metrics like making a lot of money, things like that initially. But it's definitely not the optimal path for people who want to push themselves and are ambitious and hungry to learn and build something. So if you choose not to go to college, which can be a great choice for many people, you just need to have a very good understanding of why you're not going to college and what you hope to accomplish. To be clear, this can all change over time, and I definitely don't think it's a good thing that college is still often a necessary default option. And it does seem like society is moving more in the direction of college not being a necessary option within the next 10 to 20 years. But I just think that at this current point in time, there's still a lot of advantages and resources and opportunities you can gain from going to college. So I hope that video was helpful. For everyone else watching, leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure that people have different points on each side that I missed out on. But other than that, that's all for this video. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.